I am back predicting bowl games for college football. Here are my picks for this year's bowl games. Temple versus Wyoming, I have no idea, so I'll just go with Wyoming. Ohio versus Utah State, I know that Utah State should have beat BYU as well as Auburn, so I think Utah State should beat Ohio. San Diego State versus Louisiana Lafayette, no respect for the Sun Belt. San Diego State wins big. Marshall versus Florida International, again, no respect for the Sun Belt. Marshall wins. TCU should kill Louisiana Tech. Boise State should kill Arizona State. Southern Miss should kill Nevada. Missouri versus UNC is a very tough one to pick. I think Missouri wins just because they're in the Big 12. And I have more respect for the Big 12 than the ACC. Western Michigan versus Purdue. I again have no idea. I'll probably go with Western Michigan. Louisville versus North Carolina State. I'll go with Louisville. I think Air Force would beat Toledo. I think Texas will beat Cal. I'm surprised Cal made a bowl game. They haven't beat anyone this year. Florida State versus Notre Dame should be a good game. Two underachieving teams this year. I think the Irish, though, are going to come up on top in this one. Washington versus Baylor. Again, I am surprised Washington made a bowl game. The Pac-12, besides the USC, Stanford, and Oregon, is just not very good. Surprising Washington made a bowl game. On the other hand, Robert Griffin III deserves the Heisman because he is definitely the most valuable player to his team. He is the best quarterback in the league, too. BYU versus Tulsa, two very underrated teams. I think BYU is very hot right now. I think they come victorious. Rutgers versus Iowa State. That Iowa State win over Oklahoma State was probably the biggest upset this year. I think Iowa State wins this game. Mississippi State versus Wake Forest, another game where I had no idea either team was bowl eligible. I'll just go with Mississippi State. Iowa versus Oklahoma. Iowa's been a very up and down team. Oklahoma has had a couple of stinkers this year, but I think Oklahoma's a very good team, and I think Oklahoma wins this game. Texas A&M versus Northwestern. This is an interesting game. Texas A&M was winning all their games they played this year at halftime, but ended up choking half of them. I think Texas A&M actually comes up victorious in this game because I don't think Northwestern's any good. Georgia Tech versus Utah. It's a tough one to pick. Georgia Tech's been a little bit down this year, a little bit disappointing for me, and Utah as well has been a little disappointing for me as well. I think Utah wins though. Cincinnati versus Vanderbilt. How the hell did Vanderbilt become bowl eligible? That's been surprising for me. Cincinnati is going to win this game. Illinois versus UCLA. UCLA was 6-7 there, not deserving of a bowl game. I'm going with Illinois in this one. Auburn versus Virginia. Virginia's been a surprising team this year. I think Virginia wins this game. Houston versus Penn State. Now, Penn State has no offense at all. Houston's going to win. Michigan State versus Georgia. Georgia hasn't beat any good team this year, so I think Michigan State will beat Georgia. Nebraska versus South Carolina. Interesting game. This is basically a toss-up. I'll probably go with South Carolina. Another toss-up of two disappointing teams, Ohio State versus Florida. I will probably go with Ohio State in this one because I've watched both teams play, and Ohio State looked more impressive than Florida. SMU versus Pitt. I have no idea. We'll probably go with Pittsburgh. Northern Illinois versus Arkansas State. I will go with Northern Illinois. Kansas State versus Arkansas. How good is Arkansas? I don't know. They got killed by LSU and Alabama. I don't think Arkansas is very good, so I'll go with Kansas State. Finally, to the BCS games. Stanford versus Oklahoma State. I want to make it clear that Oklahoma State did not deserve a shot at the national title. I'm sorry. You cannot lose to Iowa State and still want to have a chance to play in the national title. Alabama is definitely the second best team, and they deserve the rematch. Going back to this game, Stanford versus Oklahoma State. This will be a very interesting game. I will flip a coin on this, and I will go with Oklahoma State. Clemson versus West Virginia. Clemson was very impressive against Virginia Tech, though they did have a couple of stinkers this year. I will go with Clemson because I have no respect for the Big East. Virginia Tech versus Michigan. Now, this is a surprising matchup. I don't think either team is deserving, but on the other hand, There is no other team eligible to be in the BCS besides these two teams, so I'm fine with this matchup. I think Michigan was going to win this one. Wisconsin versus Oregon in the Rose Bowl. This should be a very entertaining game. I will go with Wisconsin because Oregon seems to struggle against other non-conference teams. Finally, the title game, LSU versus Alabama. LSU is clearly the best team in college football. I am not going against them. And finally, I am here to reveal my pick for next year. Now, if Matt Barkley comes back, I'm going to say it right now that USC is going to win the national championship next year. Who will they play? They will play Urban Meyer's Ohio State.